Yo, what's up, y'all? Y'all know what it is. Another episode of the Just Ivan Jr. podcast. How's everybody doing? Hope you're having a good week and hope you had a great day so far. First and foremost, make sure you like the page on Facebook and notify so that way you'll get a notification when we go live on here. And also, if you're on YouTube, go to Just Ivan Jr., like the page and hit the bell so that way you'll get a notification when I go live on YouTube, or you go back and watch the videos later. And then of course I'm still on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Anchor, all that stuff too. So if you rather just listen and watch the video, then you can still watch that as well. So I just want to throw all that out there as well, just in case whatever way you like to watch or listen things and things of that nature. So for this episode is going to be a little more serious, probably a little more lower than my usual stuff. Because I think it's definitely important. And it's something that, and I know I say that all, I know I say that a lot of videos. I think is important because I feel like a lot of the topics we talk about is important, but this one I think is not talked about enough, possibly. Um, and I label this titled "The Best Ability is Availability." Right? I mean vulnerability. I'm sorry. The best ability is vulnerability. And what I mean by that, and especially as believers, if you are a believer, or if you're a leader in the church, like a pastor or minister, or like worship leader, whatever leadership role that you have, and whether it's in the church or even if it's for God outside the church, you have like an online ministry or things that you got going on, right? Or even being a believer in general. And I thought about this before, but it really didn't hit me until after I've gone through some things within the last week or two, and just having a phone conversation with one of my good friends about how important this actually is, right? Because in the faith, whether it's in music, whether it's in messages, whether it's in a lot of ways that we talk, well, a lot of times we always talk about like what God has brought us through. Like, I went through X, Y, and Z. I went through this addiction, and I lost this and I lost that. You know what I'm saying? Um, but then this is what God did for me, right? And that I tried to keep my faith and trust in God, and and all these things happen and stuff like that, right? Which obviously that's a good message to share to people, especially when people are going through hardships, when people are, dealing with things, and they want to hear encouragement, thinking like, okay, God helped you out that way. I know God can help me out in this way. You know what I mean? Or, you've been through this. Look at your testimony, what you've been through, how God helped you, right? But I feel like a lot of times, um, we can miss the even powerful moment because we always like to share sometimes the end result versus the process of getting there. Like even on social media, like a lot of times on social media, people only post the victories. Like people only post the end parts, like you graduated or you passed the test or um uh you got the new job here, or you started a new business here, or you got married, right? And it's nothing wrong with that, clearly, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like sometimes time we like to speed through the process. We like to speed through the actual work, or speed through the actual hardship of what it was like to actually deal with it. And even talk about while you're currently in that process of hardship as it is. Like, what's wrong with talking about what you're dealing with currently, right? What's what's wrong with actually sharing something that you're struggling with and really going through, right? Like, why is that a problem? Why is that an issue? And I know as being a believer, sometimes, and I get it, maybe it's some, because a lot of us, we don't share every little thing that, that we do deep down on the inside. We don't share the deep, dark skeletons and things of that nature. But I feel like sometimes we need to share that. People need to know, like, because people already have a thought about believers anyway, that you have to have it all together, you got to be perfect, you got to be this, you know what I'm saying, you got to be that. And then when someone does not meet our expectations, whether you're someone that's in the church or someone that doesn't even believe or anything at all, which I don't even know why they have opinion on it, really, to be honest, but whatever. But then it's like, oh, like I thought you were saved, or oh no, I thought you were this, or, oh no, I thought you were that, and that's the wrong mindset to have because we're not different from nobody else. Anyone that has a relationship with Jesus or that are Christians, we're not different than no one else. We still go through the same exact problems, still go through the same thoughts and feelings. Like we still have issues and things that we go through in our life, right? And I feel like sometimes we're scared to share those things, and even me included. Like I don't even do it the best all the time. I try to be, vulnerable and be more transparent about the things I'm actually currently going through, not things that God's brought me through, per se. Because there's power in actually letting people know that, okay, I'm dealing with this right now. I'm struggling with this right now, right? And I feel like if you're a leader or you have people that look up to you, that it doesn't hit the same or it doesn't feel the same or it's not as inspiring when we're talking about things that we're currently going through and we haven't really got to the ending part yet. And that's not true. The things that we are currently going through and working out and bringing things through, it actually is very impactful because it shows people that we are human. It shows people that regardless if you are a pastor, you are a leader, or someone that just holds the Bible study, or just anyone as a believer, it shows that you are human. It shows that in the midst of us, you know, giving hope to people, that we still need hope ourselves. We all serve the same Christ. So why would we think just because you might have a title, you might have a position, you might have followers, you might have clout, whatever the case may be, that you're above anything, or that you don't go through anything, or nothing like that, or that people don't want to hear that? And I get it. Some people might not want to hear that, right? They might not. They might want to hear the usual encouragement, the encouragement style. Oh, I was going through this, but then God got me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get a lot of people do want to hear that, but people also want to know that you're real, that you're authentic. Because really, to me, a good leader is an authentic leader. A leader that doesn't cap. A leader that keeps it real, keeps it honest. And cap pretty much means, for people that don't know what cap means, for anyone that's older that's watching, cap is like something that's like not true, fake, off, false, things of that nature, right? I just had to throw that little, disclaimer out there. But people, people like authentic people, authentic leaders, authentic people goes a long way. Actually sharing what you're currently going through goes a long way. And I'm not talking about just sharing the end result. And if you look at the Bible does that. The Bible is all in the Bible about, like, lamenting. Like, you know what lamenting means? Like, lamenting is like expressing grief, expressing sorrow, and having a passion towards it, right? That's what lamenting is. There's a whole book called Lamentations in the Bible, in the Old Testament. Why? You feel me? Why? Because you see, like, once Babylon destroyed the temple, and I think in 587 BC or 574 BC, right? When Babylon destroyed the Jerusalem temple, the Israelites were in a bad state at the time, a lot from their disobedience to God, and then them being overtaken by Babylon, and all the grief and the sorrow that they went through, and confessing sins that they did against God, and all the grief and things that they have. Like, it's a poetic book. You know what I mean? And the Bible has a whole book and showing us that lamenting is part of the process of being a believer. Like, you even look at the book of Psalms. Like, yes, David wrote good majority of the Psalms, but there's other people that wrote different type of lamenting type things in the Psalms, right? You look like when you look at the New Testament with Paul and everything that and all the books and all the letters he wrote to the churches, and how honest he was, right? And I'm gonna read actually a verse from him later on as I wrap it up. But like, through the Bible, lamenting is a thing, especially when you look at the Israelites and what they did. Like, and and the Israelites caused a lot of problems on themselves, but the fact that they showed expression of what they were going through currently. Like, you don't see the Bible full of verses of what, okay, God brought me through this, or God brought me through this, or God brought, no, you're seeing details of people currently in the midst of what they're going through, speaking out to God, whether it's asking for forgiveness or helping me with this thing that I'm going through, or giving me the encouragement to keep going on, or repenting, things of that nature. Like you see that all through scripture. You don't never see them skip the process part. You don't never see them not lamenting and then just saying, okay, just God brought me through this. Or Moses, you see even the process with Moses and the big responsibility that he had. They didn't skip straight to, okay, God came to him in a burning bush, and then the next chapter over. All right, he helped the Israelites escape Egypt and cross the Red Sea, and that was it. No, there's a whole process, a whole part, a whole lamenting back and forth that he did with God in the whole process, and that's the part that and there's a reason why it's there. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason why that's there. There's a reason why there's a whole book on lamenting. There's like limitations. There's a whole reason why, good majority of the Psalms is lamenting. And then you see lamenting throughout the Bible. And that's something that we need to do more. Especially if you're a leader. Especially if you have people that you're leading and shepherding and people are looking up to you. We have to be willing to be more vulnerable as a leader, or even if you're just a regular believer. You have to be willing to be more vulnerable. And I'm not talking about vulnerable as far as, I'm not talking about vulnerability as far as like sharing what you went through and how God, already helped you through it. I'm talking about currently what you're dealing with right now. And I get it can be hard because, I don't know, some of us could be hiding something really bad that if we shared it, then people might question our character. Or the church might question if you should still be on. You know what I'm saying? This is not necessarily about like telling the whole world your deep, dark secrets, but it's about letting other people know how authentic you are as a person and letting them know that you're just like them. That regardless of your leadership, like your leadership, or regardless of who you are, regardless of what your character is, that you're no different than everybody else. We all need the same Christ as the next person. And it's a different power. It is a not different power, but it hits differently when someone that looks up to you, where you can actually share. Like, bro, I'm going through this right now currently. Oh, you know what? Like, right now I'm actually struggling with this same exact thing too. Or, I'm actually dealing with that because unfortunately people view us in a certain way, whether it's intentional or not intentional. And it's bringing a different level of being authentic with them and being vulnerable with them to the point where they're like, wow, he deals with the same stuff just like me. He's not a super perfect person. Or, you know what? Being a follower of Jesus is not about being perfect. Because, come on, duh, we can't. That's the whole point of being a follower of Jesus anyway. That's like one of the main reasons anyway why we follow Christ anyway. We know don't get it right. Actually, that's one of the main reasons why we do follow Christ. So it's like, I think it's really important for us that we don't always show the end result all the time. Like, we need to show the things that we're currently struggling with, dealing with, the process of it, right? Because it can get boring. It can get redundant. It can get to the same old thing. We're always talking about what God always brought. And I'm not trying to numb that. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay that fact because that's important, right? That's part of the gospel message, right? I get that. But I feel like also part of it is letting people know what you're dealing with. Letting people know that you are human, that you go through things, right? And honestly, for my church leaders, because I'm, one of the lead, I'm one of the leaders in the church. I'm the student pastor at my church, and I get it even from our standpoint because when we go to church, we have to leave our things at the door, right? We can't always be expressing what we're dealing with and going through. And I want to talk on this because, when we're at church, people are coming there to get help because they do have issues. They do have things that they're working on. They do have family members that are sick, or they're sick, or dealing with different addictions and different problems, stuff like that. And you being a leader of the church, our job is to help them, right? So it's not about us, right? You check those things at the door, right? And you're supposed to. Like, I'm not up here saying like every time you talk to them about their problems, you're like, oh, I know you're going through this, but guess what? I'm going, you know what I'm saying? But what I'm saying is there's different ways, especially for there's people that you're always pouring into. It's okay to be like, look, man, like, I'm dealing with this right now too. Oh, you know what, man? Like, yeah, I have depression too. I have anxiety too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I deal with this too. Like, I'm dealing with it right now. Yesterday, I had a really bad day. You know what I mean? And like, people that look up to us, they need to hear that. I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes they need to actually hear us say that we struggle with these things right now. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because part of being a relationship with Christ too is not a super magic formula. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole sanctification process that you do have to go through, right? As you're becoming a follower of Jesus. It's not a exact switch. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're still going to go, and whether you've been following Christ for years, right, and been doing it the right way, or the so-called right way as best as we can, there's still going to be moments where you're going through something, or you're going through a hardship, or you're going through something. And, certain people need to hear that. They need to see that, you know what? When I relate with Jesus, not everything's going to be perfect. Things are still going to happen in my life, things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Like, people need to see the realism of that, the reality of that. Because sometimes they think everything's just supposed to go right. Or, okay, now everything's going to, now my problems going to go away. Or I'm going to be able to still handle these situations, because you know what I mean? Like, my bad, my allergies been killing me this week. Oh, my Lord. Whew. But I just think it just brings a different level of appreciation for who you are, like when you are able to be authentic enough to actually share what you're currently dealing with. Because sometimes we even get like our pride getting away, like we don't want to because people don't want to hear this, or people don't want to listen to this, or people don't, you know what I'm saying? I've dealt with this myself, like for me to be vulnerable and me to be honest too, especially within the last, like this past week and last week, I've dealt with a lot. As as far as I do deal with certain mental health things like depression. I do question a lot if I'm doing the right stuff. Like, am I making an impact? Am I doing God's work good enough? Am I doing a good enough job? I battle with that every day, every single day. After I have a youth group meeting, or after I might preach a message, or after I even do these videos, or do the podcast, I'm always double questioning and thinking, am I doing the right thing? And struggling with that mentally, thinking like I'll be wasting my time sometimes. You know what I mean? Or like just balancing, like you know some people that know me, they know my mom battled with of cancer. um and she dealt with that through 2020. They took it out and stuff like that, so she beat that part of it, but then it just came back recently, so now she has to go through the process again, and just going through that again. uh you know my dog, which sounds crazy, but like, my dog that I've had since 5 weeks old, raised him, did everything with him. He died of cancer, died right in front of, me and my dad Wednesday night. Like, seeing him take his last breath right in front of us, like just gone just like that. You know what I mean? And with my other job, um, like I drive a lot, like in my day job and stuff like that. So I drive a lot. So I be tired a lot at the wheel. I dozed off plenty of times, things of that nature. Like, not all the time, but I have dozed off. And sometimes, like, after I get off, I be really tired still. You know what I mean? I still be tired. And I even got an accident recent because of my fault. Because I was at a red light, stopped at a red light, chilling. Then I dozed off, and then I heard a horn, and I freaked out. You know, thinking that the light was green, I passed on the gas, and then before I realized it wasn't green, I hit somebody. And I dozed off enough to like put not only my own life in danger, but somebody else. You know what I mean? And it hasn't been really the best week. You know what I'm saying? The last week just had a lot of stuff on my things that I'm currently dealing with all the time. Certain things I'm dealing with my family all the time. You know what I mean? I'm sharing these things because I want you to know, like, yes, I do spread the hope of Jesus. Yes, I do uh spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Yes, I do share hopeful things. Yes, I do challenge people on certain things. Yes, I do try to be the best leader that I can be for, not only for, my church, but even for like my own friends and family and things of that nature. Yes, I do deal with, yes, I do all these things, but I still struggle. I'm still human. I still have pride sometimes because I feel like no one cares. You know what I'm saying? I still have pride sometimes thinking that I'm supposed to be this leader, so I shouldn't be expressing certain of these things. And it's not true. Like, people do care about, and I'm not saying everyone's supposed to be my therapist or anything like that. Clearly not. But people do care when you share. Like it just hit differently when especially when you're a believer or somebody that, people are known for hope and all this and that. When they see that, wow, you still deal with this stuff, wow, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what makes, Christ, so much more reliable, so much more loving, so much more. And I'm gonna explain what I mean by that, because at the end of the day, you know, I'm still gonna have these problems. Like, whether I had a relationship with Jesus or not, these same problems were still gonna exist into my life. Right? So whether I have Christ or not, I'm still gonna have these same exact problems. The difference is I have somebody that I can depend on. I have someone that I can always vent and talk to. I have somebody that even when I do make mistakes, is always willing to forgive me. I have someone that always will hold me accountable. I have someone that will help me actually persevere through anything that I am going through. I have somebody that loves me unconditionally through all my mess, through many times of me always not treating them the best, always not being honorable to them like I supposed to, right? Somebody that that loves me unconditionally, someone that I could talk to any time of the day. I could share anything about and not worried about someone gossiping about it or anything like that. Like, that's what Christ is. Someone who forgives us for all the sins and all the bad things that we do. Somebody that can help us through any life struggle or anything that we're dealing with, and he helps us out in many different ways more than what we think. Because sometimes we think that when God helps us, that he helps us by just getting rid of the problem. Sometimes we think that, all right, this is definitely God because the problem's gone and I don't deal with it no more, or he fully eliminated it. But God does work that way, but God can help you in many different ways. Sometimes God will keep it there. Sometimes he'll let us go through these certain things. Sometimes we need to learn from our mistakes, and sometimes you need to sit in the bad mistakes that you do. And then even sometimes for certain things that are out of your control, sometimes God just let it happen because he's growing something in us that we can't even actually see. Like, a lot of the times, the hardship and the things that we go through actually grow us to the person that we are today, right? And even like when I look at Paul in the Bible, Paul talks about, in 2 Corinthians, about a thorn that he has, right? How he could boast, like in 2 Corinthians, like that he could boast. If, like, even though he knows he has no room to boast, that he knows the character that he has, that he could boast about all the stuff that he's been doing and the gifts and the things of that nature and stuff like that, right? And he's talked about a thorn that, that God gave him to keep him humble, to um to let him know that God is the source of comfort. God is the source of him being able to do what he's doing. God is the source of him dealing with what he has to deal with, right? And in the 2 Corinthians 12, 8-9, and you know what? I'm actually gonna pull up another whatchamacallit, but I'm actually gonna share my screen. I want to show the verse real quick. Hold on one second. All right. Share this real quick. Go. All right. I'm not trying to make this into a Bible study, but I just want y'all to see what I'm talking about too. Sometimes it's important just to see it as well as hear. All right, give me 1 second. All right, cool. Hold on. All right. Paul says, he said, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made in your for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And chapter 12 talks about Paul's vision and his thorn that he's dealing with, right? So, oh yeah, let me read verse 10 too, because verse 10 is pretty fun. For the sake of Christ, then I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So hold on, let me read all this again. So this is 2 Corinthians 12, 8-10. I'm gonna read all of it. And this is the thorn that Paul deals with, and this is the agony thorn that he deals with, right? So Paul says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So you see here, Paul, Paul is pretty much Paul is describing, he's writing this letter to, to the church in Corinth. And he's pretty much describing, like saying, like, look, man, there's a thorn that I actually have. And the thorn pretty much is like, there's an ongoing issue that he has. Because honestly, as long as you could be a believer like in Jesus for many different years, right? Now we know for the like a really big sin, like a really bad sin, God will, help us. Because if you're like an alcoholic, obviously you don't want to be an alcoholic for the rest of your life, and Jesus is not going to like allow you to be an alcoholic so his perfection can be made in your weakness like forever. But we're saying for little stuff like maybe some little things, like let's say for instance, like you have anger issues, or maybe your mental health, or like who knows, it could be maybe even something like really bigger too. It could be. It really could be. My bad. I don't want to just, because even for alcoholics, I mean, still, this verse still applies to that, right? So it's not even limited to that, honestly. But pretty much, there's a thorn is something that we all are going to deal with, and what some of the thorns, some of the things that we have, God might heal us, or God might help us to not do this thing anymore, whatever the case may be. And there's some things that we might deal with our whole time we were in our relationship with Jesus. There might be some things that we're always going to deal with through our relationship with Jesus. And Paul said, I even pleaded with the Lord 3 times. But he said, for my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in your weakness. So that way, when you boast, or that way, when you would talk about how great you are, we're not great. We're only great because Christ, and how he helps us through these problems. It's not by our own power, because we got stuff that we can't get rid of, we can't deal with. And we can't do these things without Christ anyway. And in verse 10, he said, for the sake of Christ, then I am content with being in hardship, weaknesses, persecutions, all these different things. Because when I am weak, that means I am strong. So meaning, when we're currently in our hardships, when we're currently dealing with these things, when we're currently in the midst of everything that we're dealing with, yes, we're weak. Yes, we're weak in our flesh. Yes, we're weak because we struggle with these things. Yes, we're all this and that. But we are also strong because of Christ, because his grace is sufficient for us, and his power is made perfect in our weakness. So even though we're weak, even though we do things wrong, Christ can still use that for the greater good of not only ourselves, but for even people around us. Sometimes there's things we go through just to help somebody else out. Sometimes there's things God will allow us to go through something because it might grow a different tool in us later. Like, we don't even know why we even go through the things that we go through, in the deeper meaning of it sometimes, right? We have to remember, like, in Jesus, in Christ, that yes, we're weak. Yes, sometimes God's going to allow these things to be there because we might need it, right? We just probably just need it to be there to help us, to humble us, to make sure we know where the source of our strength, our comfort, all these other things come from, right? And that could be another reason why, to make sure you express what you're expressing, going through what you're going through. Let people know, like, look, this is something that I deal with all the time, right? But God's grace is sufficient for me, right? And this is something that I told God, I really wanted this to go away and things of that nature. Now, God can tell me, look, all right, let's remove this thing. And then God might tell me, like, nah, this needs to stay here for a while, because I'm gonna use this for you to help somebody else out, or I'm gonna use this to grow more patience in you, or I'm gonna use this to learn that you need to depend on me more. Like, there's always a inner hitting meaning when it comes to that, and we cannot skip this process when it comes to the gospel, when it comes to helping ourselves, when it comes to even leadership. We can't skip this process. We can't skip being vulnerable, because that's one of the best abilities people can see that we have, is we're willing to be vulnerable, we're willing to share what we're currently dealing with and struggling and going through, right? And I know sometimes as a leader it's hard to think that, because you don't, especially depending on what it is, because it could be really, really, bad, and people might really look at this the wrong way and say, you shouldn't be a leader or anything like that because you do X, Y, and Z. But, and I'm not focusing on like the worst of the worst things of that nature, but, or even if it is something that's really, really, really bad and you might have to step down for a little bit, something like that, and being vulnerable about it. Like, I mean, I mean, it's not a bad thing either. But what I'm saying is, when we share things that we're currently dealing with, we're being authentic. We are even helping ourselves out in the process too, because we're letting out things that we might be holding in for a long, long time. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it's good to let things out, not just like in a teaching way, but in a way that we need to really vent and get this thing and stuff off our chest. And you know, all, also sharing stuff also helps let people know that, in the midst of what you're going through, God is doing something through you. Even in your weakest times, God is using this for any reason and every reason to maybe either help you out, help somebody else out, and to let people know like this is part of the process. This is what we all walk through. This is what we all do. That's why this is so important to be a part of the church. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so much different, like so much power this brings when we actually share these things that we're currently dealing with and going through. I just want to encourage people that let's not skip the process. Like, let's not always talk about the ending result of what God did. Let's also talk about what we're currently dealing with, what you're currently struggling with. Like, dang, I'm currently working on this, or I'm currently going through that. Letting people know, like, okay, you know, to stay in the process, to stay with it, to not, give up, to continue to keep pushing it, pushing on. Because the end result looks good, it sounds good, is what people want to hear, right? They might get you all the likes, but what we really need to hear is the right now, the in between moments, the grind, the hustle, the hardship, the stuff that makes us cry, the stuff that we don't want to talk about, the stuff we don't want to process, the heartaches, the crying out to God, all this stuff. That's the stuff that we really need to really hold on to. So, I mean, that's pretty much what I really wanted to talk about, because that's one of the best abilities you can have is vulnerability, being vulnerable, willing to lament, seeing the power in that, realizing that the things that we're currently struggling and going through, yes, we're weak. Yes, our flesh is weak. Yes, we can't deal with this stuff on our own, but we are strong because Christ's grace is sufficient for us. That his power is made perfect even in our weakness. The Bible does talk about how I think Paul actually says this too, actually. that that the strong, that in God's weakest moment, he's still stronger than us. In God's like not smartest moment, he's still way more wiser than we are. So we can trust him. We can trust the process. We can trust the things that he allows us to go through, even though it sucks him and we wanted to go away right now. But let's let other people know, like, look, I'm in the same sucky process and things that I'm going through right now, whether it was my fault for doing it or whether it's not. But you're not alone. I'm dealing with this with you. I've been there. I'm dealing with it right now. But God's going to see us through. That it's okay to share these things. It's okay to act like you don't have it all together because we don't. Who we lying to? Don't lie to yourself. Trying to put on the facade like everything's Gucci. Who we lying to? We're just lying to ourselves. Be authentic. You'll never go wrong with being authentic and being who you are and being a true, genuine to yourself. And that's what's really going to make a difference in people's life. So don't be scared to release that and to let people know that you are currently dealing with this right now. Or you know what, God's working on me with this right now. Or I need more work with this right now. Like you won't always have to share the end result all the time. Like the Bible clearly talks about lamenting, talks about in the moment, all through it. Because it's important. Because that's what we actually deal with. It's not always about the end result. I mean, we already know the end result, if you're a believer, we know the end result and where we're going after, life is gone over with. But it's also about today, the moment, right now. How are we dealing with that? And that's, the important thing that we can't neglect. So I'm done yapping. It's 35 minutes in, so I'm done yapping. But I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And, leave a comment. And, like, if anything, any other topic or anything you want me to talk about and touch on. Like, because I'm always looking for new things to talk about and touch on too. So you got to, I want to hear you guys' opinions on it and things like that. So don't forget to comment, leave, stuff like that. So you already know what it is. I'm out. Peace.